Can you hear me over this? Do you know, Jay, do you know if it's going through the live stream? Okay. Is it really? Well, I'm getting text that the live audio is coming through, so.
All right,
All right, so I'm just gonna close out this this ticker, and we'll just get it going. All right, now we're live, and everyone can hear us. So, after some technical difficulties, we've figured
shocker.
it out. Yeah, we're kind of notorious for that. Anyway, back with another episode of Sons of the Hunt podcast. It's been a little bit, but we wanted to make sure we had one worth it here, and I think we do. We have Chef Michael Hunter with us tonight. He's as his new book, The Hunter Chef Cookbook by Michael Hunter. So author, hunter, forager, chef, restaurant owner, very multi-hyphenated. Thanks for coming on with us.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me.
How are you doing up there? You guys still dealing with COVID, I assume, right?
Yeah, I'm actually losing my mind a little bit. We are in lockdown still. The restaurant's closed only for takeout and delivery services. Our travel is being restricted. We're supposed to have these stay-at-home orders in effect with a curfew, but it's not really legally binding, and it's just a mess. And I think everybody's getting pretty sick of it here. We're having a huge problem with getting vaccines into the country, and we're struggling to get going on things here. So I'm frustrated.
Yeah, I could only imagine, man. I could only imagine being a restaurant owner in this time. It's just, I salute you for everything that you guys are doing, keeping it going.
But it's more time to go hunting. So like right when COVID happened, it was snow goose season here last year. When we shut down in March, so I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm going snow goose hunting for the week, and just took off. So, and then it was just waiting for turkey season, and I'll probably spend more time hunting this year more than I ever have.
Yeah, I think that's the sentiment of a lot of outdoorsmen.
Yeah,
but kind of want to get into it. You are the co-owner of a restaurant, kitchen, and bar.
Yeah,
with it's Jody.
Jody Shapiro.
Jody Shapiro, yeah, and he's the photographer in the book as well.
Yeah, super impressive photography in this book.
Absolutely, yeah, great job.
This is such a great. More so than the actual content. This is such a well put together, like, piece of literature. It's awesome. Like the cover, the texture, everything, the pictures, the photography. It's next level. But anyway, I think it would be wise if we. I'm sure you've told the story 1,000 times, but I think that a lot of our audience might not be privy to the fact of kind of how the reputation of the hunter chef came to be. I know you got a lot of media attention a little while back there. So can you just walk us through how it started?
Well, so we've been open for a couple of years at the restaurant, and we just would goof around with our chalkboard sign out front, and we were always popular. We're a small space, so we're easy to fill up, but We're 45 seat little restaurant, and when we opened, we made a bunch of the best new restaurant lists and all that stuff. And I've been a chef in the city for about 10 years prior to opening Antler, so we were busy right from the beginning. And it wasn't until a vegan activist cyclist rode by that she showed up. She took offense to our sign. We were kind of, like I said, we would get playful and cheeky with our chalkboard sign. We'd kind of tease other restaurants, and we have these little back and forths with our local friends and stuff. And one of the slogans on our sign was "Venison is the new kale," and we thought it was pretty funny. And this vegan activist took offense to this chalkboard sign, and she was already a part of a group that would protest slaughterhouses and protest, meat packing plants and these type of places. So we actually got an email from a security company that managed another very large corporation that had to deal with these people, and said, hey, here are some screenshots from their Facebook groups. Like they're targeting your business next week. And we just couldn't believe it. We're like, yeah, whatever. Like, who cares? And it was pretty sad in the beginning. It was like, 4 people outside with stupid signs, and they were kind of harassing us and giving our customers a hard time. And people just were kind of annoyed, and nobody really cared, and we didn't care. And it was a bit frustrating, but it just dragged on. It went on for months, and they would come once a week, and then they would kind of like grow in numbers. There'd be 6, and then 8, and then 10, and then it was kind of around like 8 to 10 people for a couple months. And then I would always leave because I would get really pissed off when they were there. And I didn't want to do anything stupid, so I would just leave, take the night off. And the big night that we're talking about here, when I cut up a deer leg in the window, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to be there. And we get farmed. So all our game is farmed. Our laws are a lot like yours. We can't sell the game that we hunt. So we buy from all local farms, and we had a deer delivered that morning. And I actually saw customers coming in, and one of the women in the group was like almost in tears, and I could see she was upset. And I just thought, these people, they don't really have the right to do this to our customers. And I just thought I had to fight back. And I thought, they're going to offend us and our customers. I'm just going to offend them. So I took a, entire back leg of a deer, went downstairs, cut it off the hip, and brought it upstairs and plunked it in the front window. And I just started to joint it. We take apart all the muscles for steaks and grinding, and we cure and hang some of it and make sausage and whatever. So I just started to break down this deer leg in front of them. And then I ate a piece of steak in front of them as icing on the cake to finish it off. And they filmed it, put the whole thing on YouTube. They put it on their vegan channels, and we just started getting pounded for like 3 or 4 days online. Vegan people from all over the world were calling us, emailing us, giving us 1-star reviews online, and we thought we were screwed. We're like, oh, well, that's been a good ride for a couple of years. And then when the mainstream media picked it up, it just exploded, and support started pouring in, and it just turned into a circus. And that's when there was articles being written in newspapers and online articles in Russia, England, France, Singapore, Australia, South Africa, all over the States. People Magazine wanted an interview with us, so it just blew up, and it was the definition of going viral. It was just insane. And, we had to hire security, and people were coming for like dinner and a show. Yeah.
It's crazy, man. You have people. Like I had to reach out to people and talk to like your like agent. I mean, that's gotta be surreal now. But it's
like I've had an agent to do like marketing work and stuff like that. So like, and just for publication with the book and stuff, it goes through the PR guy. But yeah, it was weird. It's not something you think about when you open a restaurant is going to be attacked by angry vegans that want to shut you down. Like they literally wanted to shut us down. They would put it in their Facebook groups. They wanted to shut us down. we actually got, and they protested us once a week for 11 months.
Wow.
And it was brutal. They were taking pictures of my family and putting them online. I used to be fairly public with my family photos and stuff, and then it got to the point where we were actually able to get restraining orders on some people from what they were saying and doing online. And
Wow.
Now I'm pretty private. I don't post pictures. I wiped my social media stuff, and I don't post my family and children and like nobody. So it's pretty crazy what people can do and get a hold of you online.
Ultimately backfired and kind of did you a favor there. So
it did, in the end, but it was incredibly stressful, man. It wasn't fun.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd repeat it. It was
it seemed like a pretty tough situation to be in, and I'll give you 100% props, man, for going after it and getting that, and just kind of maybe they learned something. Maybe they learned a little something about how to remove the top round from the bottom round and find that that the eye round.
The funny thing is, like, we actually have a lot of views and stuff in common. Like, and that's, because of the way animals are treated in slaughterhouses and the fact that, how they're raised is the reason that, I hunt, and I know a lot of people hunt, is because they want to eat, more ethical meat. They want a more natural meat. The hunting and being outside and all that, that's great. And I love that as well. But, wanting to be ethical and eat real food is, a real part of why I hunt. And the funny thing is, like, they don't understand that at all. They don't even think about that. And, if they said to me, like, we want to protest the government for like reform on how animals are farmed and treated in slaughterhouses, I'd probably help them,
Right.
What they were doing wasn't inspiring anybody. They were just pissing off, they pissed off the entire neighborhood because, they'd be on their megaphone and people were trying to sleep upstairs, or they have a young baby sleeping. Like, they didn't inspire anybody,
Right.
their message. And I at least I hope that's what they learned is, maybe have a dialogue with people first before you start, or organizing protests and figure out, what you guys can do together as opposed to just start conflict.
Yeah, a little bit too reactive on their end. But I mean, ultimately, it's good and worked out. But how about today, like now? Has that pretty much calmed down? Or do you still get it?
Yeah, no, that's been a couple, that was a couple years ago. Like I said, they protested us once a week for 11 months. I think at one point they just decided that, they're not hurting us at all, and really they're just wasting their time. People were coming to make fun of them and screw with them on the street. And I think, they realized that, their efforts were best somewhere else.
Gotcha. Yeah,
that's great. Like you said, we do have a lot in common with people who, they don't understand how hunters feel about wildlife and the animals we pursue and stuff like that. I mean, we have a tremendous amount of respect for them. And in fact, we probably know way more. We've probably forgotten more than they know about wild animals and their habitat and how they live and what kind of conditions they have to kind of go through. And, we study them as hunters. I mean, we have to get to know them really well in order to pursue them. So I think, I don't think they see that. They don't understand that. And to kind of change the perception of what non-hunters think hunters are is a big part of kind of the mission statement of what Mark and I have been doing with this podcast. So that's kind of why we're really excited to have you on. To have someone who's a huge steward of the wildlife and puts it on display like you do. I mean, your Instagram is amazing. Like, if y'all need to go out and check out his Instagram handle. Mark has it up. He had it up on the screen. He'll put it up on the screen again. Like, it's watching. I follow Jody on Instagram as well, which is kind of cool. I actually just messaged him a couple of days ago. He put up a post about one of the recipes, and over the weekend I had cooked one of the recipes from the book. I'm like, what? I'm going to dive in, and it was amazing. My whole family they just absolutely loved it. I did the shank, the braised shank with the tomato.
Oh, nice.
That tomato jam is insane. I never would have thought of that. That was absolutely amazing, man. I still actually have some upstairs in the refrigerator. I'm going to put it on my cereal in the morning. Like, it's that good. Like, it was awesome. But the cool thing that I found about the book was the recipes are awesome. and anybody could really do them. I mean, there's a few of them that you might need a little bit of culinary skill to pull off, but there's a bunch of them in there that you really don't. It's laid out really well. And it's everything from a really intense recipe to something much more simple. So anybody could really find something to cook in there. But what I really thought was cool about the cookbook was the stories that were kind of mingled in amongst the recipes. That was what I really, cause I mean, I messaged Mark, was it maybe a day after, we got the book, and, I was like, this is what a cookbook ought to be. This is how it should be laid out, like, especially for wild game, but for any genre. I mean, this is how a cookbook should look. I mean, it's put together very well. The photography, again, props to Jody on that. He did a phenomenal job with the pictures and that type of thing. But just the kind of the stories that pull off, you post in there, like your first hunt. I thought that was a really cool story, how you kind of described your first hunt with turkeys. I don't know if you're up for it, but if you wouldn't mind.
I didn't grow up hunting either. Like I think that turkey hunt I was 18, and I didn't grow up hunting with my dad, and I was actually I think I was already in culinary school, and I've been working in kitchens since I was 13. And what really at the end of the day inspired me to write the book was because the guys I went hunting with, they didn't pluck the bird, they didn't keep the legs, they cut the breasts out and ditched it, right? And they said to me, "Oh, you can't eat that shit." Like, they were like, "The legs, you can't even eat the legs. It's terrible." But I had been in kitchens, and I had been working in things in restaurants where, lamb shanks is you can't eat that like a steak. It's tough as nails. So you put it in a stew. So for me, I'm like, "What are you guys doing? Like, give me those legs." Like, don't, and then I'd cook them for them, and they were blown away. Like, they'd say to me, "How many turkey legs I've thrown out?" So it was, and that's where I get, pleasure and satisfaction as a chef is teaching people, and as a hunter, it's like, okay, here's all these cuts that, you haven't been really utilizing, and teaching people how to use things like a deer neck, and, you don't have to grind up all the tough stuff. You can, chop it into big, huge chunks, or get out the hacksaw and put it in a crock pot and make something really tasty out of it.
100%. Yeah. We're big on the turkey legs. We use them, man, to make great tacos. Stew them down in the crock pot for a couple hours, man. Totally. Fantastic.
Pot pie. I think my favorite's a pot pie with them, but
there you go. Yep.
Yeah. Nice.
That was Mark's go-to, was the pot pie, with the turkey legs.
Yeah. That was always my dad's thing, is pot pie fanatic. But that actually leads into another topic that I wanted to cover. I mean, we're coming up on spring here. I'm hoping at some point. It's been ridiculous here. I don't know how it's been up there. Probably, not great.
Similar.
Yeah, we're getting snow like every
3
day.
feet of snow. We're battling through right now. It's insane. There's snow up past our knees everywhere we go.
But as far as the wild turkey goes, what you said you're big in a pot pie. What else? I mean, we were talking before, Jay and I, before we went live, we're saying, most people love to either smoke the breast or take it out and grill it, or bread it, make nuggets or whatever.
Yeah.
Jay and I are into the turkey taco, making the, slow cooking, braising the legs. Yep. What's your recommendation to somebody with a wild turkey?
Really just play around with it, use the whole, try and use the whole bird. And then, at least with the breast, try brining them. There's a recipe in the book for it. It's becoming more, popular, and people, I think, are becoming more knowledgeable, but, you can take that breast and soak it in, salt. It can be as plain as salt water overnight, or you can add a little bit of sugar and spices and herbs and garlic and stuff to it. And just even overnight, really makes such a huge difference when you cook that meat. It's so much, more tender and juicy. And even for farm turkeys or chicken and stuff like that, just try brining it. But for a wild turkey, it makes such a difference in the final product.
Yeah.
So that's really my go-to is always brine it. And then, like you said, braising the legs, you can debone them and grind that meat, and try making a stock, that it's so flavorful. And you take all those bones and throw it in a pot, either simmer it really, really low overnight, or just, put it on during the day and, do it for about 6 hours. And, that liquid is so just amazing for, cooking rice or making a soup, or then, when you're going to braise those legs or braise that deer neck or whatever it is you have, you use that stock that you made from the turkey and throw that in there. And it's night and day between, using that and either, store-bought stock or water,
100%, 100%. Another cool thing, I think, when you talk about the turkey is like the butchering section that you put in the book. That's huge, especially now. I mean, Mark and I have had conversations about this, and we're starting to see it kind of trend a little bit, is people wanting to learn more about how to butcher their own game. I don't know how it is up there down. I'm sure it's pretty similar, but down here, like we're in the Northeast Pennsylvania, we're actually only about 5.5 hours from you. Yeah. So once they loosen that border up, we might be coming up for dinner. To just a side note.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Love that.
Oh man, we're huge fans of that type of cuisine. I mean, Mark and I are no strangers to the back of the house. We've both spent a big portion of our lives back there, and I think that kind of is reason why we spend so much time focusing on the culinary side of hunting. But the butchering side is something that people overlook, I think, far too often, especially now with a lot of the local butchers are tied up with livestock. I mean, a lot of people are like, we're going to go in, we're going to, my neighbor and I are going to buy a cow and or a pig, and we're going to have that butchered up. And, people are calling the butchers saying, hey, I got a deer. Can I bring it in? They're like, no, sorry, I'm full. And it's like, what do you do? So a lot of people, I think, are starting to lean. Thank goodness, it's about time. But it took this to kind of get them that direction. But it took them a little bit more. They're starting to lean into like, how do we do this? So to have a section on that, I mean, I've been cutting turkeys up for a long time, and I went through the part where you butchered that turkey. I'm like, damn it, I've been doing it wrong the whole time. Like, like splitting it out like that is beautiful. I mean, it's a great thing. I mean, is that something that you grew up doing, was butchering your own, or is that something you kind of learned as you went through the culinary process?
Yeah, it's something that I learned just working in restaurants, and I think it was just a natural progression for me. And then when I started hunting, it was also just financially. I was young. I had a daughter I had my daughter when I was 19. So for me, it was like I couldn't afford to take that thing and drop it off at a butcher. And we had done. I wanted to learn about butchery, and I said to the chef once, I said, I want to learn how to do a lamb and a cow and this and that. And he goes, all those animals you just listed, they're all, and so I said, I want to do a pig, a lamb, a cow. And he said, they're all the same anatomy, like you can learn on a lamb and you can do a deer, it's the same anatomy. Absolutely. Exactly the same, except it's just bigger. So that was kind of like, oh, like cool. Like I'll just, so I think we bought a couple lambs and featured them on the restaurant. And that's where I learned how to butcher. And I applied that to then when I started shooting deer, it was just like a bigger lamb. So, and now you can buy like whole lamb at Costco. It's insane. So, I think there's lots of tools out there. YouTube is amazing if you really want to, watch some videos and there'll be like professional butchers on there that can go through step by step with you, and you can practice on a lamb or something small. You get a pig and, do it with your friends. And then, when you shoot a deer, it's not that overwhelming because it's, they are so much bigger than what you're used to. So I think really it's just, wanting to learn and educating yourself and then just trying it, or finding a friend that does it. And just, where I am, our deer season, it's usually pretty cold. So we're we do it in the garage. We can hang it outside in the backyard. But I know down south when, people need to have a cold storage or somewhere to put it. So it gets a little bit more tricky, but.
So it's funny that you bring up, how you're taking culinary experience and you're so easily able to transition that into something applicable in the outdoor lifestyle with like butchering. We kind of talk about applying things that we learn in the outdoors to modern life like all the time. So it's funny how that kind of works backwards the way you describe that there. We talk about the kitchen mentality versus like the outdoor lifestyle mentality. And it's just, you kind of have to have a little bit of crazy to make both of them work. But go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I say indeed, you're absolutely right. I mean, like, I spent almost 20 years of my life working in kitchens, and from everything from family restaurants to diners to corporate restaurants. I mean, Mark owned a restaurant for several years. I mean, so we both just love the cooking side of it, and when you can translate that into like wild game into that, New Year's Eve, my wife and I got married on New Year's Eve, so that's our anniversary. So every year we used to go out to dinner, and then I started thinking, I'm like, I'm just going to cook. Like it's not as fun going out because it's limited menus, that whole thing. So this last year we had a few friends of ours wanted to get together. So I'm like, I'm going to make my wife's favorite dish is risotto. So I pat on the back. I perfected the risotto over the years. I've gotten pretty damn good at it. And I'm like, well, listen, I'm going to come over. We'll have a dinner party if you want, but I'm going to make risotto. And it turned into me cooking the entire meal for everybody at the party. Nice. And I'm like, well, is there anything that anybody doesn't like or any allergies? I said, I'm thinking about making some venison. And it was like crickets. No, everyone was like, I don't know. I'm like, challenge accepted. So I ended up Frenching a rack of venison and making that. And at first it was like they're hesitant to eat it because they knew what it was. But then somebody started eating it and was like raving about it. Next thing you know, they're fighting over the plate of venison chops. And it's just like it's such an excellent way to introduce somebody who doesn't spend time in the outdoors to what it could possibly provide. And it's not just, listen, I love a good stew. I love a good burger. I love a good chili. But when you can elevate something like venison to something that someone's never seen before or had before, I mean, it's a huge advantage to us as a tradition or as like a heritage, for the hunters. And that's again, another reason I am absolutely loving this cookbook. I'm going to use the hell out of this. In fact, I've already dirtied it up. Just for the record.
Awesome.
I've got some stains on some of the pages already. You know what I mean? So
that shows that you're using it,
Well, that's it. At first I was upset. I was like, oh man, I got it messed up. And I'm like, well, that's what happens when you've got it open on the counter when you're working. That's going to happen. It's going to happen. So I mean, was it a challenge to really introduce that type of cuisine, or was it something that was really, accepted right out of the gate when you guys started doing it?
Well, that was sort of just our concept when we opened it, and I didn't know how it was going to go. I'd worked at other restaurants where, we'd have elk as a feature or venison as a feature or a rabbit duck feature, whatever it was. And so I think we were really one of the first, and, at least we're in Toronto, the first restaurants to do only game. And one of the other things we only sell wild fish that's sustainably caught, like hook and line. We don't do any of the gill net stuff where people just drift nets for miles and pull up, a bunch of bycatch and they're killing a whole bunch of stuff that, doesn't even get eaten. So we really just want to serve wild food and introduce people to different stuff. Whether that's like wild leeks or morels and chanterelle, like wild mushrooms too. So when we opened, we didn't know how the game thing was going to go. We did put we had like a fail-safe chicken dish on the menu. And we just ended up eating it for staff meal every week because nobody ordered it. And people were coming to try venison and try, eat duck and have rabbit and all this stuff. So for me, it was just so rewarding to have people that were coming to try something new. And, people that, and it was an awesome chicken dish. It was, deboned like that turkey, and we cooked it flat on the skin side. It was like super crispy, and it was a beautiful chicken dish. But just nobody ordered it. People were coming to try the venison. So it went really well right from the beginning.
So because of introducing wild game to people, do you find yourself yielding or fielding, I should say, a lot of hunting questions? Like, do you think that you're opening doors for people like that?
I hope so. I don't know. I do kind of direct, there is the odd message I get, or someone at the restaurant's looking where they can find game. And there's a couple little, boutique butchers and grocery stores now that are starting to carry it, which I think is great. But if I can inspire people to take up hunting, that's, just a win, another win. Because I think it, speaking to people through food is a great way to inspire them. I don't think a lot of people know, we talked about, vegans and inspiring people and stuff like that. I don't think a lot of people know that, our hunting dollars are actually paying for conservation. And, I don't think people know that, when we buy a deer license that year, and we buy our waterfowl stamp, and we pay for these licenses, they're not cheap. They're pretty expensive, and they pay for wildlife conservation. They're paying for these scientific studies that are determining, how many ducks there are in the wild and how many we can shoot. And, our limits go up and down every year, or every couple of years, the limit will change, or there'll be, a shorter season or a longer season, or now there's this overabundant species or whatever it is. I don't think people understand that piece of it. So I think food is a really great way to, start that conversation. Well, it's like, oh, I hunt because that's all I eat at home. Like once in a while we'll buy, a nice beefsteak or something for a special occasion, or we'll buy lamb, for Easter. My mom likes lamb or something like that. But, the day-to-day stuff we're eating, I got 2 freezers at home. I'm sure you guys do too. And it's just full of game.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And going off of what you just said, I have to applaud you for the piece you have in the cookbook, the philosophy section. I think that if, like you're saying, more people read that, like that should be taped to the front of the window out there. Like if your protesters read that piece, that I feel like that is a conversation starter using the entire animal. I mean, that was really well said. I urge people to grab a copy and just to read that part. That was well done. Another thing that you just mentioned, the foraging. You seem to be quite the forager. Did you pick that up along the way, or is that something that is self-taught?
Yeah, a little bit of self-taught. Again, in the kitchens, we would buy this stuff. And then I worked with a chef that was a bit of a forager, and he brought in morels one day that he found while mountain biking. So that for me was a huge inspiration. I was like, what do you mean? I can just go find these like outside right now and then we can eat them? And he said, yeah, like they grow, it was springtime. He said, they like hilly, kind of sandy, shady soil. And I worked at this really cool kind of country inn, and it was across the road from this, huge valley and just open space, provincial park. And I actually later learned that we're actually not supposed to pick mushrooms in these provincial parks. But I went down there and I pulled out, pounds of morels, and we came back and featured them on the menu that night. And for me, that was just incredible, because these wild mushrooms, a lot of the times you can't buy them in stores. So for me, it's something as a chef that it's so special. These things are only around for about a month, 5 weeks maybe, and that's it. Once that month is gone, that's it for the year. So I look forward to May and turkey season. Not just for wild turkey, but there's wild leeks, morels, stinging nettle. There's all these things that now I've learned over the years that start becoming available in the spring. So it's a lifelong learning thing. Like I'm not, I still don't consider myself an expert in anything. I'm just a bit of a jack of all trades. But yeah, every year there's always like a new mushroom I'm learning about, or something else I'm learning. Oh, I can eat that. So I think it's just a lifelong thing. And much like hunting, I thought I was a good turkey hunter, and then last year I just got burned like over and over and over again. I finally got my turkey, but like I don't even know how many times I got out and got busted, and I missed. Like I was like, how do you miss a turkey? Like it's just and it happens sometimes, and it was just it's funny. So I don't consider myself an expert in anything.
I know that deal, boy. I could tell you stories. It's insane.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just turkeys are one of the most frustrating birds to hunt, I think, and that's the allure of them. Agreed.
Did you get to spend some time in the deer woods this year?
I did, yeah. And again, it's one of those things where I've had amazing deer seasons for like 10 years in a row, and the last 2 years in my hometown, I'm having a hard time seeing deer, and our coyote population is really out of control. And I think at least a lot of my friends too, guys I've spoken to, hunters are eating tag soup. The last couple of years here for whitetail deer. there's just not a lot of them, and there's a lot of does. People aren't seeing the bucks as much, and they're all on cameras at nighttime. They're not coming out in the day. So yeah, it's really strange. We're really seeing the ebbs and flows of the populations and the numbers. So I've been going to Manitoba, I've been going to Mississippi a lot to hunt deer. And it's, now I'm starting to, want to get into predator hunting more and learn about trapping and help manage some of these populations because, the fur trade is down, the fur industry is down, I think, as a whole. People aren't trapping as much. And, trapping was a big part of our heritage before, and selling fur was a big part of, the Canadian heritage. And, with anti-fur movements and things like that, people it's not worth anything these days. And so people aren't trapping as much. And our coyote population here is just crazy. Every night, if you have land, it's just howling every night, and it sounds like it's in your backyard. So it's something that I really want to learn more about is, predator control and trapping. I've been looking into the trapping courses here. COVID, everything shut down, but that's a goal of mine is to get my trapper's license.
Yeah, something I don't think Jay and I have ever discussed on the podcast, but this would be a great time to bring it up, is eating coyote. Would you do it?
Yeah, I think I'd try anything once. Yeah, why not? Is it something that I would, maybe once I ate it, it would sort of change my mind. But a lot of them here have mange. They're scavengers too. I think it's a lot like eating bear. I definitely try it. Legally I'd use the fur. We have to use the fur, or donate it. A lot of times I'll donate it to friends that are trappers or that will sell it. I have some Indigenous friends too that I'll give the furs to because they get a lot out of it. And guys that tie flies and fish and stuff will use a lot of the feathers and stuff like that. So, yeah, I would definitely give it a try. Something I do want to try is cat. So like bobcat or lynx or cougar. A friend of mine just shot a cougar out in BC where he lives. And I've just heard it tastes like pork. So I really want to.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. Well.
I'm with you. I think that the narrative might need to change on that. From the kind of testing the waters in that field, it seems majority of the people that try it enjoy it very much. Yeah. So I would definitely like to get my hands on it at some point.
Yeah, I think, if you're shooting it, I think everybody has a moral responsibility to eat it. But, the coyote, versus dog thing is just, it has it's like the first time I ate squirrel. Like, I think I stared at it for 10 minutes. Like, oh, am I really going to eat this? And I was like blown away. Like, wow, this is delicious. And now I love squirrel hunting and shooting squirrels, and something that I can do with my son, and he loves it. So
yeah, same here. My son and I, we have an extended squirrel season that runs till the end of February. So we're just waiting for some of this kind of weather to settle down before we get out. I mean, he's 13, so he's not going to really brave the elements like we would, in our older days, but we're looking forward to it. Yeah, we've never really talked about eating coyote. We've talked about fighting coyotes a couple of times, I think. Yeah. How many coyotes could you fight if you had to? Like, it's too many beers on that episode. Yeah. But it's pretty cool that it's hard. It's sometimes I struggle to kind of get these thoughts in my head, and I try to get them out of my mouth, and it doesn't work too well. But the fact that you're kind of really pushing in on the conservation side of it, and kind of really starting to make that part of the forefront of the conversation, I think is super important, because a lot of people, they don't understand that. They have no idea that most game organizations don't get money outside of hunting license. That's what pays for, the research and all the programs that come through. That comes from $100 in taxes and license sold. I think that's super important to kind of make that a big part of the conversation.
And it's funny, like, I'm guilty of it too. And when it comes to hunting in Africa and hunting in other parts of the world, like, for me, at least when I started hunting, I was like, oh, I'll never do that. Who the hell wants to shoot a lion? Why would you, you can't even eat it. You can't bring them. And then, when you actually start learning about why people are going to Africa to hunt, and what, how much it costs to go and hunt. And, like, for instance, a lion tag, say it's $30,000. Like, that's a huge, I could never afford that. And I still really don't have a desire to do that, but at least now I understand it. That money is paying for park rangers for the year that, are battling, poaching and keeping these parks safe. And without those hunting dollars, there's no rangers to look after the wildlife. And really that money is going back into conservation. And it's really, it's hard to wrap your head around it when you don't understand something. And then, the Jim Shockey does a podcast with Joe Rogan where he really talks about it and goes into depth about it. And, before that, I was really ignorant to it, and didn't understand it. So, I understand how people that love animals, think hunting is bad. But, really it's just, it's education that I think will change how people think.
Talk about Jim Shockey. He put a nice little excerpt in your book for you there, huh? That was pretty cool.
Yeah, he's the nicest guy. I reached out to him. My wife's family live about half an hour from him on Vancouver Island. And when I saw that he had this museum, near where her family lived, I was like, man, we got to go to this museum. It's, this is so cool. And so I sent him a message and just said, if you're around in the summer, I'd love just to say hi. And he was just the nicest guy. And I think when I went, he was getting ready for a caribou hunt, and he had two huge freezers full of meat. And he said he needed to make room for his caribou hunt. And so that he was, donating it to friends and family and, anyone he could give meat to. So he sent me home to a barbecue we were about to go to with I think he gave me like 4 giant moose roasts that were just, I think it was like an entire moose backstrap cut into 4 pieces.
How cool.
And I think, he's like, oh, take as much as you want. And, I took 1 piece and he's like, no, he's like, really? He's like, take as much as you want. Like, I'm trying to empty this freezer out. So yeah, he's just the nicest, most generous guy. And now every time I go out there, I'll send him a note just to see if he's in town and go to the museum, and we'll, shoot the shit for a while, and we'll talk to him about, his adventures he's going on and all that stuff. So he's a really, really nice guy.
Yeah, super interesting dude. Super interesting dude for sure.
Yeah, that sounds like it's opened a pretty nice door. When are we gonna see that cross content there?
Yeah,
hunting a moose up with Jim Shockey. That's gonna
that would be a dream, man. I don't know. I know he's pretty busy, so I did put that out there. I said, hey, if you need a chef on any of your trips, I'll cook for the camp. So
sounds like a good deal for him.
Yeah. I've used that line quite a few times. It works for.
Oh, it's a great skill to trade and barter with.
Yeah. I got another friend of mine does a hunting show, so we did. He invited me on one of his hunts, and I got to go hunt a whitetail in Manitoba on horseback. And I just, I had to cook we cooked some stuff for the show, and I cooked dinner for the guys and stuff a couple nights. So it's a good trade.
Yeah, that's a win-win.
That's pretty cool. We have a friend of ours. His name is Jeff Hunsinger. He's a chef at a restaurant in our area. It's an amazing restaurant. They do a lot of really high-end stuff. He's actually on the line. He's on the line at the restaurant right now, commenting on the live podcast, which is pretty cool. Yeah, there he is, Jeff Hunsinger. So shout out to Jeff Hunsinger. But one of the guys that frequents our podcast and some of our content. He talked about deer liver, how he wants to love it, but he doesn't really know what to do with it. And I'm in the same boat. I've tried venison liver before, and I struggle with it. So do you have like a go-to that you just absolutely love, or like every time you get a liver, this is what you're thinking about?
Yeah, I love it. It's one of those things you don't want to overcook. So, make sure it's fresh, eat it within a couple days of harvesting it. I find it doesn't freeze very well. Like the texture out of the freezer tastes a lot different to me than when it's fresh.
Okay, fair enough.
And really just, eat it as rare as you can. The more you cook it, it just dries out, and it really tastes like iron. That iron flavor just like comes through front and center. The other thing is, you got to be really careful with like shot placement and gutting your deer. I find if you cut open the stomach or anything that gets on that liver, really just ruins it. So it's really important to take care of it as best you can and get it into a fridge right away. So because the organ meat goes bad the fastest as well. So, and then I like to do like a really kind of tart, like fruit sauce or jam or something with it. I find the fruit really kind of works well with the gaminess of liver, especially deer, because deer liver is strong. Like it's really strong. So if you don't like liver and stuff like that, it's a tough one for people. But blueberry, blackberry, any kind of like jam like that or compote. The best is just to buy the frozen berries. Sugar and vinegar, and you don't want it too sweet, so the vinegar helps kind of balance that out. And just Google recipes for a compote or like a chutney, something like that. Type that into Google. There's a recipe in the book for it too.
Or tomato jam.
Try that one. Yeah, the tomato jam would be good because it's acidic, right? It's got that kind of sour, sweet and sourness to it. But it really kind of just masks that gaminess of the liver. And eat it medium rare. It's turned into one of my favorite things from the deer.
There you go. He just asked, is Dave McCaslin, are you a fan of thinner or thicker slices for the liver?
I wouldn't go more than like an inch, like a half inch is good. So you can kind of, sear, cast iron pan is really the best for stuff like this, or like one of those heavy bottom steel pans.
Heard.
Get it like ripping hot, and then season it salt and pepper before it goes in the pan. Vegetable oil, tiny little bit of butter, and just get like that caramelized crust on either side of the liver and take it off. Like 1 minute on either side, and then I just find if they're too thick, then the inside's cold, and that it's a bit gross. You don't want to eat it cold.
Heard. Yeah. That Maillard process does amazing things.
Yeah. So, anywhere like half an inch to an inch is probably ideal. And then some people flour it. You can dust it with a little flour and get it crispy on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
But caramelized onions, another great one to put in there. They take a long time, but really, really worth it. Take a whole onion, cook it down, add a little brandy and a little pinch of sugar at the end. And it, really just opens up a lot of the flavors in there.
So my issue with liver is that I can't possibly eat an entire deer liver by myself at the time that it's fresh. Like I'll cut off a couple pieces, I'll fry it up, and I'll enjoy it, and then I'll pretty much vacuum seal the entire thing.
Yeah.
But what I haven't tried yet, but where my mind has been going is to make. I think if you're going to freeze it and take it out, I think maybe you could get away with doing pate with it.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to work, or because I haven't tried it yet, but that's going to.
Yeah, no, freezing it. I same thing. I'm in the same boat. Like I'll eat 4 or 5 slices of it over the couple days after I shoot it, and then I'll cut it into slices and then freeze it, vacuum seal it, and freeze it in the slices. But yeah, pates are great. Any terrine recipe. You can put it through the grinder and then mix it with ground meat and eggs and stuff like kind of like a meatloaf out of it is great too. Any kind of scrappy bits, I'll grind it up and mix it in the dog's food, and he loves it. So there's all kinds of uses for it.
Yeah, nothing going to waste. So just to piggyback off of that, something you said just previously. So as somebody who's culinarily minded, when you're hunting and you're hunting deer, what is your preferred shot placement?
Well, when I started hunting, I grew up in an area that was bow only for deer. So, I'm in a tree stand, I'm shooting down, and I'm going for the lungs and heart. Quartering away is sort of like the best shot, but that doesn't always happen. Like I shot one. He was chasing a doe, and if I didn't shoot, I wasn't going to get a shot at him. And he was running straight at me because a doe ran under my stand, and he was coming straight at me. And I stuck one in, it was underneath his collarbone, and it went, through his heart, but it also went through his whole stomach. And he ran with the arrow in his stomach and just shredded everything. And it was just awful. And I ended up dragging him through a creek right away to wash it out. And it was great that there was this creek there. I could wash it out, but I'm taking broadside shots. A lot of guys I've been hunting with actually, they shoot deer in the neck, and it's not something I've done before, so I actually really want to try it. But I don't have tons of deer to choose from. Like I just went to the States, to my friend's place, and I saw 27 deer in one day. And for me, like, it's just unheard of. Like, I don't see 27 deer over 4 seasons combined. So, if I had that those type of numbers, I would experiment more with shooting them in the neck. But yeah, I like broadside shots. And calibers are interesting too. Like, I find the larger calibers, you're blowing holes right through the deer. And I shot a deer a couple of years ago. I actually don't own this caliber. I want to get it. It's a 243. And I shot a deer from 165 yards away, just broadside, just, behind the back leg. And I just couldn't believe the damage that caliber did. I couldn't find the entry hole until I skinned it. And I hit this deer, and he fell over in his tracks and died instantly. And when I opened him up, the bullet had just exploded inside. There was all these fragments of copper and stuff in the lungs, and I just couldn't believe it. And it's actually a caliber I want to buy for the family to shoot, because there's no recoil, such a flat shooting caliber. And I think for deer, I think it's a great gun.
Yeah, I agree. And the reason I asked you that was, I hate to, label myself as mainly a bow hunter, but I pretty much am. But if I take the rifle out for like a doe, like later in the season, and hopefully my buck tag is filled, I always find myself tempted to take a shot at the head. And it's such a highly contested shot. And, people go back and forth on it, and it's tough. But you have a high probability of not wounding the animal if you miss.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much an instant death for the animal, and then you're not wasting anything. But I think that if I practiced more with the rifle and I was more confident, I would take that shot. But I'm still at the point where I don't want to see a deer running around with its jaw hanging off.
And that's the problem, right? And everyone's heard those stories, and I've never done it. I don't know, if I was close enough, and like you said, you practice a lot and you're confident, I don't see why not. But I think it's such a small target, and they just have to move or turn their head, and you can wounding with that. So I don't know. I'm going to try the neck shot though, as I heard that, and I've seen videos of it. They just fall over right in the tracks, and
it's a popular shot to take. I know a lot of people that aim for the neck.
Yeah.
When you have like a food minded take on it, when you're looking at it going, okay, how can I save the most meat possible? I think that's where you start to kind of think outside the box of the whole, behind the shoulder, mid body shot. You know what I mean? You don't want to ruin a shoulder because there's good meat there. You don't want to ruin the heart because that's fantastic to eat as well. There's a lot of good stuff there that you're messing up if you kind of take that traditional shot. So I think that kind of comes into it. I wanted to kind of circle back a little bit, talking about the wild game being a great method of introduction. Because from what I gathered from the book, that Jody was not much of a cook when you guys started kind of hanging out. He's a filmmaker, celebrated filmmaker, by the way. Obviously a phenomenal photographer when you look at the book. So it was kind of an unlikely relationship that you guys developed before Antler opened up. And I felt that was a really great story that you might want to touch on, and the relationship you and Jody kind of developed over your time before Antler opened, and how that kind of inspired a lot of where you're at right now with Antler.
So we're loosely connected through family, or how does this work? My sister married his stepbrother, is how it goes. So I would see his
well done.
I would see his mom at these family functions, and I think she was telling me like Jody was taking cooking classes or whatever. I think I only met him once before, and I'm kind of like, okay, sure, whatever. And then I think my sister told his mom I was working on a book, and I'd bought a camera, and I like photography, and I started to shoot the book myself. And I told his mom, she said Jody was taking cooking classes at the college. And I said, oh, well, if he ever wants to hang out at the restaurant, here's my card. Tell him to give me a shout. So when I told Jody about the book and I was getting into photography, he offered to help with the photos if I taught him how to cook. So really that was how the book started. We'd go to the restaurant where I was employed on Sundays when they were closed, and we'd light up the dining room and start, he was there with his camera, I had my camera, and we would, just cook and take pictures. And really it was just a fun project we were working on, which then sort of led into, we started doing some game dinners, underground game dinners for fun, that I ended up finding out were illegal. And then I had a visit from the game wardens at the restaurant where I worked, and they were pretty cool about it. But, they basically just were like, you can't really do this unless it's connected to a charity, and I had to show that we weren't really making money from these dinners we were doing. It was more of a sort of, we were actually doing the dinners because we wanted to get photos for the book. So we were like, okay, we had all this food, we'd cook all this food, which we couldn't eat all on our own. So it started out as little dinner parties for friends and family, and then we started selling tickets and stuff like that. So anyway, long story short, it's really how Antler came to be, was working on the cookbook together.
That's pretty awesome.
Write that down.
Yeah, right.
and now it's funny that he's actually started hunting now. So he's recently, and he's 50, so now he's got his hunt license. And he's a city boy, so some of his friends and family were pretty shocked, that he's gone out and owns a gun now. I think it's pretty crazy.
Cool, you've done it. You created an outdoorsman. That's awesome.
Inspired somebody, yeah. So it's pretty neat.
That's excellent. I mean, it's kind of the opposite. I have a good friend of mine. One of my best friends is Matt Anderson. He's a chef, but he's never hunted. And he comes up to visit every once in a while. He doesn't exactly live close. So when he comes up, he usually stays for a day or two. And I started cooking some venison, different methods. And he's like, this is insane. I need to get a hunting license. And it's like, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Man. It's we just got to inspire people.
It's magical. Food. It's magical. Yeah.
And it's so funny. There's so many hunting shows out there, and there's nothing to do with food in any of them. And it's really, it's like, it's such a missing piece. Like, it's what it's about.
100%. Agree 100%.
And I think that's why Steve Rinella has done so well, is because he's, one of the first to really put a focus on the food side of it, and I remember I was in, my early 20s when his show first came out, and I was like, shit, like, this is what I'm trying to do. And I was kind of like, not pissed off, but just like, damn, like someone beat me to it,
Right. We know that feeling well.
It was like, man. But then I started watching his stuff, and I was like, he's doing a really good job of it, and he's inspiring. I'm sure he's inspired a lot of people, and the fact that he's got a hunting show on one of the mainstream streaming services is amazing. There's
that's a big win.
So much more, viewers on there, and it can reach people that don't hunt and maybe inspire them to get into it. Yeah,
for sure, and he's got his own way of cooking wild game and his own approach, and I mean, I'm a fan for sure. I've watched all of his episodes.
He's a hell of a pioneer for what we're all trying to kind of come up behind him doing the same thing,
Yeah. And having met him too is touching on conservation. Like he's insane about conservation. That's all he talks about. And really for me, when I started it, and I've mentioned this to some friends, it's only something I'm really starting to think about now, is I was very selfish when I first started hunting. It was about, me feeding my family, and it was just taking, and now I'm like, shit, like, what am I doing for content? What am I doing to give back to make sure this is here for my kids and for their kids? And for me, the easiest way I can do it is through food and teaching people about, using, nose to tail and using the whole animal. And if that's, my role in conservation, then, I'll take it. But I'm really starting to think about, what I can do and how I can help.
Yeah, it's a natural progression. When you start out hunting, it's like it's all about that, the air quote success of taking an animal. You know what I mean? There's a lot more success to be had outside of killing something. But when you're first starting, it's a little tricky to kind of wrap your head around that. But the more time you spend out there, the more time you realize, like, okay, I'm part of a system. This is not about me. It's about the big picture. And the more people, the faster they realize that, the better off we're all going to be, because then we all become, spokespeople for it, become stewards of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
So we're rolling up on an hour here. Do you have a couple more minutes to hang out with us? I have a couple
for
more
sure, man.
So
Absolutely.
I'm gonna pop something in the stream real quick. So this is what I've been obsessed with lately. I saw this picture, and lately I've been into like these like fermented hot sauces and infused honeys.
Yeah.
What culinarily right now, what are you kind of like into? Like what's your big go-to right now?
Well, that's one of them. This the Nashville hot rabbit, we call it. When I first
I like that.
was starting out in kitchens, I wanted to work at the fine dining restaurant, and I wanted to go to France and learn all about fine dining cuisine and stuff like that. And now I'm really just enjoying like home cooking. I like really rustic stews and things that just have so much more flavor. I think sous vide is a great technique, but I just think people are going a bit nuts with sous vide, and especially at restaurants. I think at home people sous vide, like, I think it's great. I think it's really cool. People are learning more stuff to do at home. But restaurants that do sous vide, you should see the amount of bags these restaurants are going through and how much plastic they're just putting into the garbage can. Because this stuff, once it's full of food and blood and oils and stuff, I don't know if it gets recycled. It goes into the recycling bin, but I don't know if they can actually reuse it. And for me, sous vide like takes the fun out of it. Like, you're just boiling something in a bag essentially at the end of the day. And I think it's a great tool for some things. There's no reason why you have to cook ribs for 36 hours in a sous vide bag, and then at the really low temperature it's at, I don't think that's healthy. There's bacteria growing in there and all kinds of stuff. So what I'm into now is just perfectly roasting a pheasant, or I'm trying to perfect. We have a lot of a big Chinatown here, and there's some really amazing Asian restaurants, Chinese restaurants especially. And for me, I'm like fascinated right now with like Peking duck, and it's not necessarily I want to recreate like the sauce and stuff. I'm just in love with the technique and how they get that skin perfect. And a lot of it has to do with the oven they're using. The oven heat is coming around it. It's not necessarily from the top or the bottom. But the way they treat the animal is just incredible. And the pork too, they roast a whole pig and it's hanging either by its hind legs or by its head. I think it's for hanging from the hind legs in the oven. But they actually, and they do it with the duck too, they separate the skin from the meat, so they actually use an air compressor.
That's a pretty cool technique.
What they're talking about. But a lot for the people that don't, they use an air compressor and they put it under the skin to actually puff up the skin and pull it away from the meat, so that when it cooks, the fat is dripping out and away from the meat, and it's able to get so much more crispy that way. So I've actually just been experimenting how to do that at home with wild duck and wild goose, because I shoot a lot of Canada geese where I live. They're everywhere here. It's the overabundant species list. And I'll there's no possession limit on them, so I'll have like 100 or 150 in a season in my freezer. So I've been plucking them whole. A lot of times I find the skin can be tough, so I've been breasting them, and I'll actually cut the legs out. I just skin the bird, take the breasts and legs, and then I'll keep the bodies for stock, but I just remove the whole skin so I don't have to pluck them. But I've been experimenting with plucking them and pulling the skin off the meat and letting them air dry, pouring boiling water over them to tighten up the skin, and then drying it some more, and trying to master like a Peking style roasted goose.
That's awesome.
So I'm always just trying to learn new stuff and figure out new ways to do stuff. And geese are one of those things that they're just so tough sometimes. So really figuring out how to cook it so that it's it's moist and juicy and whatever, and then educate that to my friends that you don't have to throw out the goose legs, you don't have to skin the bird all the time. You can use the skin. So I'm just trying to, for me, it's just learning. I want to keep learning myself, and I think that's the fun part about being a chef is it's never, it's never ending learning.
Yeah, it's a parallel as with an outdoorsman.
Yeah,
it's the same exact thing. I saw this recently. I'm into that.
Oh, the duck wings.
Yeah,
that's another one, and we've tried to do it a lot at the restaurant too, and trying to get them so they're not tough. And these we get these from a farm, a local family farm, and we would kind of braise them. And I found when you braise them, the flour doesn't stick to them when you fry them or whatever. So I started smoking these, and we smoke them for about 3 hours. The first 2 hours are uncovered, and then the last hour we cover them so they kind of steam itself. And you can actually pull the meat right off the bone. It's super tender. You can also, but when you fry them, it's not like they're not falling apart. The meat still sticks on them. So we'll smoke them and then fry them and then toss them in sauce. And it's
interesting.
That's awesome. It's really, really good. Yeah, you can do it at home, like on the Traeger, or if you have another smoke or whatever. I think you probably do the same thing in the oven. Do it really low in the oven.
Right.
I cooked those. That was about 235 Fahrenheit for 2 hours uncovered and then another hour covered.
Nice. That's
cool.
Good stuff, man. It's a great different method of taking something that everybody usually has their staple process and kind of changing it up a little bit. And that's a big part of what we love to do. And like, that's anytime we see something new, we're like, all right, how can we translate that into something that we shoot? You know what I mean? Like the sous vide thing, you know what I mean? I have a little sous. My wife bought me a little sous vide unit. So I sous vide, it was a, it was one of the, it was a round roast. It was just the eye round. I had an eye round from a big buck, and then I threw it right on the charcoals in the backyard on the fire pit, and like it was amazing. It's like insane. So there's these awesome ways that you can kind of translate wild game into it and just really make it awesome. So to see the duck wings and stuff like that, it was that's fantastic. And again, I can't say enough about the book. I mean, we have you on the podcast, but we're not guys that blow smoke. You know what I mean? And this is I was so excited when we got a copy of this and we started kind of pouring through it and looking at it. I was like, all right, I got to pick a recipe and do it. I got to figure something out and then get into it. And man, I had so much fun just kind of like flipping through, thumbing through the recipes and figuring, what's going to work. What do I have in the, what do I have in my freezer that I could actually make work?
That's the thing, right? Is finding stuff for it is now the hard part. So
that's it. And I've been inspired to start saving the shanks. I mean, a lot of people in this area, they throw the lower leg. They're like, I don't know. I don't even want to grind this because there's so much silver skin in there. They don't even want to mess with it. They just toss them. And I'm like, it's killing me. I'm like, send them my way. Just save them. Hold on to them.
I had a friend and I was like, give me the moose tongue. And he was like, what? And I'm like,
yeah.
And now I'm like, hey, can I have the moose tongue? He's like, nope.
You ruined it.
The last couple of years I've been getting so many venison hearts, and I feel like we're starting to put it on display, and I don't know if that's going to keep happening soon. So
I got a bag of venison bones in my fridge right now, just waiting for stock. I mean, demi-glace is one of my favorite things to make. I mean, it takes the whole weekend to make it, but it's so worth it. I still have a couple cubes of venison demi-glace laying around in the freezer. I vacuum seal it in the cubes, and then I just throw it in the pan, and it's good to go. But it's like it blows their mind when I explain the process, like what it takes to actually make that little cube.
Yeah,
they're like, are you serious?
It takes to reduce.
Are you out of your mind? Yeah. Maybe a little bit.
It's like super concentrated flavor. Right?
It's amazing though. It's amazing. People just, it's like they can't wrap their head around how you can make something taste like that. And it's like, it's not that hard. It just takes the time and the effort to put into it.
Right in the Canadian vein, we've been, Jay and I've been discussing about doing a little poutine recipe, a little wild game poutine.
Go for it. The trick is just getting the cheese curds. Like just cheese doesn't work. You got to get, I don't know if that's available where you guys are. It's hard even for me to find them sometimes. Like I find it's in like the little country stores and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a couple spots we can hit up that have it.
Yeah. Cheese curds is kind of the trick. And then just a gravy. Like one of the books that was big inspiration for was Martin Picard. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so his
Absolutely.
restaurant Au Pied de Cochon, his cookbook, he's got a great recipe for poutine in there, which is the sort of. I don't even think we've ever served it at Antler. It's kind of just one of those things that is known for for Canada, but it's just funny. It's more of a Quebec thing, but it's a great it's a great dish.
I have a quote taken out of your book written down in my notes here. It says the Canadian culinary experience can be hard to define, and then next to it in capital letters I just wrote poutine.
Yeah.
And that was my note for that. So but it does seem like that is true. It does seem hard to define because at least from your standpoint, it seems like you have so many different influences.
Yeah.
What would you say is your biggest influence?
I think just as a country, their food it's all immigration. Like, 50, 60 years ago, it was European immigration, and 100 years ago was, English and French colonialism. And, now, we have like little pockets. There's like little India. There's, my restaurant's actually a little Portugal. There's all these little pockets of ethnic diversity where people have brought their food culture, and it's just incredible. And, we have Thai restaurants and Japanese restaurants, and like I mentioned, Chinatown, where you can go and we've actually spoken to a lot of Chinese chefs about it. Like it's sort of underrated, and the amount of time that these people put into roasting that duck and roasting that pork, and it takes like days of preparation. They're selling these most of it's takeout, but it's like $10 or $12 for lunch, and you get this huge plate of this perfectly cooked Peking duck, and it's almost like like taking advantage of it, and it's so. I think that Canada is just such a multicultural nation now. Canadian food doesn't really exist. It's just a melting pot of culture. And for me, that's, one of our mission statements at Antler, at least in the beginning, was, we wanted to help define Canadian cuisine. And for me, I look just to what grows around us, what's wild around us. And that's really where, the theme of the restaurant came from.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's awesome.
It's a beautiful thing, man. It's a beautiful thing. Maybe in the next cookbook, we will see a recipe for tag soup. Because I was disappointed that there wasn't one in this one. I was really looking for one.
That'd be a good picture, actually. Tags, or tags like this plasticky orange material too, or yellow. It would be.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
Melting it on a grill.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're well over an hour here, and I think you guys got anything to wrap up with?
I'll leave that up to you. Actually, I want to kind of throw something out there earlier, because we are doing this live. So as Mark was doing his introductions, I'm pretty sure my wife yelled down the steps, "Don't forget easy on the eyes." I'm not sure how I feel about that, Michael.
Well, my earlier days, getting gray.
I could add to that it is nice to see handsome long-haired dudes doing well in the outdoor industry.
Yeah,
it's like it gives me some hope.
See that?
I feel good about that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
all right, guys. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Really, yeah. Get after it,
you.
guys. Get the book. Go out and check it out.
Where's the best
amazing
place to find it? I mean,
well, the best place for us is at thehunterchef.com.
Okay.
We'll send you out a signed copy. For ease, Amazon chapters, Barnes and Noble, anybody that's is it Books A Million? There's one of them that they do free worldwide shipping, which I thought was cool. The book's a little bit more expensive, but there's free worldwide shipping on some of the platforms out there. But it's really, buying it off our website. The shipping's not that much, but really wherever books are sold, it's available.
Fantastic job of both you and Jody. I mean, fantastic job on putting the book together. It's a beautiful book. It's fun to look at, fun to read, great content, and fantastic recipes. So congratulations to both of you on this pretty successful endeavor with both Antler Restaurant as well as the Hunter Chef Cookbook. Man, fantastic job. Fantastic job.
Guys. Keep in touch, and yeah, please, when our borders reopen, come visit. And if,
bet on it.
You align it with like turkey or duck season, we'll get out into the field. Deer season is a bit trickier, so.
Well, indeed, around here as well. Yeah, it's but yeah. The spring, I'll tell you, I found a honey hole for wild leeks up my way. So morels, Mark and I have failed to find morels in our area. So we're gonna have to kind of maybe lean on some people we know to kind of give up their spots, but that's a tough thing to do. So. As far as the wild leeks, man, we got it nailed down.
Nice. Awesome.
All right, man. Well, thank you again. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Have a good night. And thanks, everyone, for listening.